The world stopped in disbelief. Television anchors froze mid-sentence as urgent red banners took over every major global news network. Destined for Kyiv explode mid-air over Eastern Europe. The phrase alone sent shockwaves through Washington, Brussels, and Kyiv, and pure delight through Moscow. For weeks, the Pentagon had quietly arranged a secret arms transfer to boost Ukraine's defenses amid Russia's growing offensive in the east. A new batch of precision-guided Tomahawk cruise missiles, normally reserved for U.S. Navy operations, had been modified for Ukrainian use, an operation so sensitive it was known to only a handful of officials in Washington and Kyiv. The plan was simple. The missiles would be launched from a secure NATO base in Eastern Europe, glide across friendly airspace, and strike Russian logistics hubs threatening Ukraine's front lines. But what happened next defied every expectation. According to early radar data, the missiles had cleared their launch zone perfectly. Guidance systems were stable, trajectories precise, and communications between command and control uninterrupted. Then, just as they crossed the final line of NATO airspace, something went wrong. One by one, the missiles began losing signal. Operators on the ground watched helplessly as control screens flashed red, guidance failure. Seconds later, massive explosions lit up the night sky over the border region. The video footage went viral within minutes. Amateur clips from nearby towns showed glowing trails streaking across the sky, followed by a thunderous blast and fiery debris falling like meteors. Locals thought it was a meteor shower until fragments bearing U.S. insignia were found scattered across fields. The Pentagon rushed to issue a statement calling it a technical malfunction. But the explanation felt hollow. How could state-of-the-art Tomahawks, among the most reliable missiles in U.S. history, simply explode in midair? Within hours, Russian media claimed responsibility, boasting that the missiles had been neutralized by advanced Russian air defense and electronic warfare systems. Moscow's spokesperson, Maria Zakharova, smirked during a live briefing, but no one believed it was just a test. Hours later, Russian state television aired a shocking segment. They claimed to have retrieved pieces of the downed missiles, twisted metal fragments, scorched black, but with visible markings, property of the United States Navy. The image flooded global media and sent shivers down diplomatic corridors. If the fragments were authentic, it meant Russia had direct physical proof of America's secret military involvement in Ukraine. Washington immediately denied the authenticity of the debris, calling the footage propaganda. But the timing was damning. Experts noted that the serial codes visible on the wreckage matched a recent shipment recorded in a leaked Pentagon procurement list. Suddenly, the story was no longer about Ukraine, it was about America's credibility. European allies began quietly questioning whether it was safe to rely on U.S. military technology in future joint operations. The British defense minister publicly supported Washington, but insiders in Berlin and Paris were far less forgiving. If Russia can disable Tomahawks, one German analyst said on live TV, then NATO's air power is no longer untouchable. Meanwhile, in Moscow, the celebration continued. Russian news anchors played dramatic orchestral music behind slow-motion replays of the explosions, calling it the night NATO's pride burned in the sky. Commentators gleefully described how Russia's invisible shield had defended its territory without a single shot fired. But behind the mockery, Russian generals were quietly analyzing the success, confirming that their latest electronic warfare systems had performed flawlessly. To them, it wasn't just propaganda. It was proof of technological superiority. Back in Kyiv, Zelensky reportedly slammed his desk in frustration. They wanted to show power, he told his aides, but now the world only sees weakness. His military staff warned that if Washington's weapons couldn't be trusted, Ukraine would be forced to reconsider its entire defense strategy. The fallout was just beginning. By the end of the day, one conclusion was echoing across global capitals: the balance of power had shifted. The West's weapons could fail. And Moscow had just shown the world how. In Washington, the atmosphere turned electric, and not in a good way. The Pentagon's Situation Room was crowded long before sunrise. Screens flickered with satellite footage, radar logs, and shaky cell phone videos of the disaster that had now gone viral worldwide. The incident, which many had first dismissed as a minor malfunction, was beginning to look like something far more sinister. The chairman of the Joint Chiefs leaned forward, voice grave. Greater than, sir, we're ruling out random error. This was deliberate interference. Across the table, intelligence officers began presenting their early findings, traces of signal jamming, anomalies in the GPS frequencies, and, most alarming of all, signs of a possible external override on the Tomahawks' navigation systems. Someone, or something, had seized control mid-flight. A murmur spread through the room. Could it be the Russians? Someone asked. Most likely, replied the NSA representative. They've been testing their S-550 and TOBL electronic warfare arrays near the Belarusian border for months. This was a demonstration. The revelation hit hard. Moscow hadn't just neutralized the missiles, it had humiliated the United States in real time. News anchors across the world replayed the explosion footage under headlines like, "End of American Precision" and "Russia defeats NATO's best." In the White House, President Trump was briefed personally. He listened in silence, his expression unreadable, then leaned back and said in his typical blunt tone, "Greater than, if our missiles can't make it, maybe our money shouldn't either." The comment, quickly leaked to the press, sent shockwaves through Washington's diplomatic establishment. For weeks, Trump had faced criticism for questioning endless U.S. aid to Ukraine. Now, this disaster handed him political ammunition on a silver platter. But inside the Pentagon, the focus was elsewhere: containment. Officials were desperately trying to determine how deep the breach went. Did Russia hack into missile systems directly? Or had someone inside NATO leaked sensitive codes? Either scenario was terrifying. One cybersecurity expert from the Defense Intelligence Agency laid out the chilling possibility. Greater than, we believe Russia may have used a satellite-level spoofing field, essentially creating a fake navigation bubble that tricked the missiles into thinking they were still on course, until they detonated themselves. The room went silent. If true, that meant Moscow now possessed a weapon that could blind any NATO-guided missile within range, a new kind of digital dominance. Meanwhile, in Kyiv, the consequences of Washington's confusion were already visible. President Zelensky faced one of the most hostile press conferences of his presidency. The event had been planned as a moment of triumph, a chance to display Ukraine's upgraded defense partnership with the US. Instead, the hall was filled with nervous reporters demanding answers. "Greater than, Mr. President," shouted one journalist, "did the missiles malfunction, or were they destroyed? Is US support weakening?" asked another. Zelensky paused, forcing a smile. "Greater than, Ukraine continues to work closely with our allies. Our cooperation remains unshakable," he said firmly. "Technical incidents happen in every army. We will find the cause together." The applause was forced and brief. Cameras clicked. The world saw a man trying to maintain confidence while his closest ally stumbled. Behind closed doors, the tone was far different. Ukraine's top generals were furious. They demanded immediate replacements for the lost weapons, or at least proof that the next shipment would work. But US officials hesitated. The entire missile program was now under investigation, and no one wanted another failure. Rumors began circulating that the next delivery of advanced systems, including Patriot interceptors and long-range Storm Shadow variants, was being delayed, pending technical review. Kyiv knew what that meant. Washington was quietly pulling back. As hours passed, the political fallout deepened. In Europe, the incident emboldened skeptics of NATO's Ukraine strategy. French commentators warned that blind escalation was leading the West into humiliation. German analysts openly questioned whether Western weapons were as invincible as their reputation suggested. "If Moscow can fry Tomahawks midair," wrote one columnist, "then what can it do to Berlin?" Russian state media seized the moment, running slick propaganda pieces with titles like, "The Day the Eagle Lost Its Wings," and "American Technology Meets Russian Reality." They broadcast side-by-side clips, one of the missiles taking off, another of the explosions, ending with a smirking anchor declaring, "Zelensky waited for weapons, and got fireworks instead." But the real crisis was inside the Ukrainian government itself. Zelensky's chief of staff, Andriy Yermak, slammed his fist on the table during an emergency meeting. "Greater than, they made us a showcase. We were supposed to prove their weapons work, and now we look like fools." Others suggested that Russia might have infiltrated Ukrainian logistics or even NATO data channels. Paranoia began to spread. Who could be trusted anymore? At the same time, reports emerged that a US intelligence team had been dispatched to Poland to recover debris from the failed missiles. What they found only deepened the mystery. The fragments bore no signs of mechanical malfunction, no fuel leaks, no detonation errors. Instead, their internal memory chips were completely fried, as if exposed to an intense electromagnetic pulse. Greater than, That's not coincidence, one investigator muttered. That's a kill signal. In Moscow, military officials celebrated quietly, avoiding public gloating. They knew they had pulled off something historic, a strike that didn't require a single missile, yet crippled Western confidence. General Gerasimov, head of Russia's general staff, reportedly told his aides. They used to laugh at our electronic miracles. Now they will study them. As night fell over Kyiv, Zelensky sat alone in his office, staring at a muted TV replaying the explosions again and again. The once bright alliance with Washington suddenly looked fragile. He poured a glass of water, took a slow breath, and muttered. They said the sky would protect us. But even the sky betrayed us tonight. Outside, the city lights flickered against a dark horizon where distant thunder rolled, or perhaps artillery. No one could tell anymore. The next morning, Ukraine's military command ordered radio silence on all US-supplied systems. Engineers began examining every incoming shipment for foreign interference. The trust that once defined the West's relationship with Kyiv had fractured. And far to the east, beyond forests and borders, a Russian radar station tracked every signal, recording it, studying it, preparing for the next move. The Tomahawk incident, as the media now called it, had become more than a failure. It was a warning. A quiet, unmistakable message from Moscow to the West. Your power ends where our shadow begins.